Hey there guys, so it's Prime Day happening right now and I'm going to be taking a look and seeing what kind of deals they have going on here. Is there anything worth buying? We're going to be taking a look at some mini PCs, we're going to look at some tech stuff. In general, I'm going to see if there's anything that I'm going to be picking up, if there's anything that I recommend to you, and we'll see what kind of deals are going on here. So I spent a good amount of time scrolling through and taking a look at all of the mini PC deals that they have here, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, there's not that many standout deals. Here's some suggestions that I have though. If you're in the market for an entry-level mini PC and you want just something that you can pick up for as cheap as possible and you want to be able to watch YouTube videos, watch streaming services in general, and that's about the extent of what you're going to be doing, well, the Triku WI6 here is pretty much my top recommendation. I absolutely love this chassis. It's just extremely slim. You can pretty much use this thing anywhere. It works really well as a media streaming PC, and the addition of the USB-C in the front is really nice, especially considering that a lot of mini PCs with this hardware do not come with USB-C. And for $152, it's one of the best prices that you can get for a system with the N150 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD. A lot of the times at this price point, you're really going to be looking at more like around 8 gigabytes of RAM. So this is my top recommendation, though this isn't one of those deals where I would just be foaming at the mouth to try to get on. Another recommendation though is if you're trying to look for something that's a little bit more high end, but you're not looking to spend that much more money, the B-Link with the Ryzen 5 at 5500U right now at $233. It's about the best value you can get for an entry-level everyday computer. You know, you're jumping up from a 4-core 4-thread processor to a 6-core 12-thread. It's 16 gigabytes of RAM still, but this time it's dual channel memory. It's a 500 gigabyte SSD, but it should have also a second SATA slot, and you are getting the full bandwidth of that M.2. Or I think that with this PC, you pretty much get a secondary SATA port. It's something like that, but you at least get the expandability of more storage from a system like this. And you're really not spending all that much more money for what will, in the long term, end up being a significantly better system. Okay, after scrolling a ridiculous amount to try to find anything else, we do have this W04 with the Ryzen 5 5600H for $221. That's actually a fantastic deal. Pretty much the only downside here is the fact that it does come with single channel memory, but it is extremely easy to upgrade. It's just a magnetic top. It's very easy to get in there and upgrade your system. And at this price point, I mean, this beats out even that Ryzen 5 5500U system. And for some reason, it says it can't be delivered to me, but that just has to do with the address that I have in there, but it should work perfectly fine for you. I already checked it. Everything's pretty much perfectly fine. So this right here is a pretty standout deal if you ask me. Another one of the better deals going on right now is the Boss Game N4 with an Oculink port that is currently on sale for $430. That is a Ryzen 7 7840HS, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, and a 1 terabyte NVMe Gen 4 SSD. At this price, this is a pretty fantastic chassis. I am a big fan of this system. You also do get Oculink, and it does seem to be one of the better values out there, because as you saw in one of my previous videos, the Ryzen 9 is just not worth getting. For example, the Ryzen 9 8945HS here. This GMK Tech K11 is spec'd out like crazy. You know, we're talking about the Ryzen 9, we're talking 32 gigabytes of RAM, we're talking 2 terabyte SSD, it has the Oculink. You know, it's just spec'd out like crazy, but this is $680, and this is going to perform CPU wise and GPU wise exactly the same as this, and this is a $430. So you're spending an extra $250 for an extra terabyte of storage, essentially, because both systems have Oculink, both systems are rocking Ryzen 7 Zen 4 processors, both of them have 12-core RDNA 3 iGPUs, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM running at the exact same speed, and both of them have Gen 4 NVMe SSDs. So there is just no reason to go with anything more expensive than this. Now, there is something cheaper. You could get something like the Firebat A5P, which has the Ryzen 7 8745HS. This is very similar to the A8 that we took a look at just recently, though it is a different chassis, and that does mean that we do not get the Oculink port on here, so that's kind of a big loss here. And of course, you do get 16 gigabytes of RAM, though it is in dual channel, and it is of course a 512 gigabyte SSD, and that is at $365. And this is pretty much right now the best value Ryzen 7 Zen 4 processor mini PC that you can find on Amazon right now. This is pretty much the best deal that you can get if you're just going for trying to maximize your money as much as possible. It's a pretty decent amount cheaper than the M4 here, but you are of course having your RAM and your SSD. Is that worthwhile for the amount of savings here? Personally, I don't think it is. I think that the inclusion of Oculink, the more RAM, and the bigger SSD are just all worth it for what is effectively a pretty negligible price difference at the end of the day. But if you are just trying to maximize on savings and all you care about really is the CPU performance, you want to maximize out on that, and you don't necessarily care about your RAM or your storage, at this price it's pretty hard to beat. Everything else that's competing in this price point is really looking at Zen 3, Zen 3 Plus, and you're looking at Vega and RDNA 2 based iGPUs. So if you're trying to maximize your money, like you have pretty much only sub $400 to work with here and you got to pick something up, this is pretty much as good as it's going to get for you. But I do think that it's worth it to just spend a little bit more to get to that boss game mini PC. And yes, there is the boss game P3 with the Ryzen 7 7840HS, 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte SSD for $400. About $30 savings over the M4 for effectively the exact same chassis. You're just missing out on the Oculink, but I think that the Oculink is worth the $30 if you ask me. You know, it's pretty much the exact same chassis, though another benefit is that the M4 does have a better BIOS. They did update it to have a more functional one, so that I think also is worth it in the deal here. So, you know, if you're trying to maximize your savings here and you're looking at the P3 and you're deciding between the P3 and the M4, I would just go with the M4. I think that the Oculink is worth it. You might be thinking, I'm never going to use that, right? You might be thinking, I'm never going to use the Oculink. It's just not something that I see as a viable solution for myself. And that's fine if that's how you want to see it. But in all honesty, that extends the life of a mini PC dramatically. And I think that for $30, extending the life of this is pretty nice. And especially because it's going to increase the resale value. You know, the specs here might not be great in 3-4 years, but if it has an Oculink port, suddenly it's going to be a lot more interesting to somebody out there, because now something that would otherwise just be stuck with this Ryzen 7 and the Radeon 780M, it can now have a GPU that will make this a far more functional system for an extra $30. I just think that you will extend the life of your mini PC dramatically by spending those extra $30 that I cannot recommend that you go with something like this. Oh, wait. I think I might have found something a little more interesting here. So there's the Retin A8 here. Now this looks to just be the boss game M4. But if you look at it here, you can see the boss game logo there, the design, pretty standard chassis they've been using for multiple generations now. Look at the Retin here, and it is pretty much identical. This shouldn't be too surprising. I've taken a look at Retin systems before, and it does seem like what they do is they will buy systems wholesale from other manufacturers and kind of just rebadge them and sell them. It happens a lot, so it's not like it's anything too out of the ordinary, but what this means though is that this Retin A8 that's selling for $400 with the Ryzen 7 8745HS is looking to be right now the best deal you can get right now on a mini PC with a Ryzen 7 Zen 4 processor, because 32 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, $400. And you do get the added benefit of having the Oculink. So this kind of really blows that Firebat system out of the water, because now the price difference that we're talking about here is so minuscule that it just does not make any sense. Because if we talk about the value of the included Oculink, the value of the increased RAM, RAM, the increased SSD, it closes the gap so much. And like I mentioned before, that Ryzen 7 7840 HS is essentially the same as this Ryzen 7 8745 HS. So why spend the extra money? Why spend the extra $30 for effectively the same level of performance? Because now this blows that P3 out of the water. Because this is the P3. It's just the P3 with an Oculink port, so go with this instead. This is getting my top recommendation right now. And I've bought Retin systems before, and I've been sent Retin systems before, and they do seem to be pretty rock solid. I mean, they are just buying from other OEMs that are well established, so really can't complain much at all about their systems. Yeah, I mean, look, by comparison, look at what B-Link wants for the Sur 8 here. You know, same Ryzen 7, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, $500. Geekom for their A8, same Ryzen 7 8745 HS, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, $490. An extra $90 for what? A different logo on it. Pretty much the only way you're going to get anything cheaper is if you go down the bare bones route with something like the Minisform UM870, but then you are going to have to put in your own RAM and SSD in here, so how quickly is it going to take you for this $310 system to turn into an over $400 computer? You know, from the same seller of this bare bones UM870 to get it spec'd out with 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte SSD, that's $480. So that Retin system is really just the standout deal right now going on for Prime Day. I've kind of just been looking through pages and pages of mini PCs, and I can't really find anything else that I would say is as worthwhile of a deal. Now, I will say that a sale like this is a great time to start to upgrade your setup, not necessarily just in a I'm going to get a new PC type of way, but more in improving your peripherals. One of the best things you could possibly do is upgrade your monitor. I'm just going to throw out some recommendations for things that I've tried out in the last year that I've really liked. This Scepter curved 34-inch gaming monitor, 1440p ultra wide, 180 hertz. This thing's pretty sweet. Yes, it's not an IPS display. I'm pretty sure this is a V8 display. I don't really have an issue with it. For the price that I paid for it, this is an extremely great display, and I really just can't find much of anything to complain about it. And at $201, this is an insanely good price. Now, if you want to go a little bit more name brand, you could go for this Samsung one here. Again, same ultra wide, but this one goes up to 100 hertz, and it is an older panel. I would really just go with the Scepter, but if you're the type of person that doesn't want to buy from a brand that you don't recognize, well, congratulations, you know Samsung. But this thing has been pretty spectacular. I do recommend it, and it does pair pretty well with a mini PC. Though at the resolution that it's at, you are going to need a bit more of a high-end system, and especially if you have something that has an Oculink port. Now, I'm going to recommend something that's a little out there right now, and I need you to just listen to what I'm trying to say here. This Scepter 30-inch ultra-wide gaming monitor. This thing is about the height of a 24-inch monitor, but it is an ultra-wide, and its resolution is 2560 by 1080. So it's a 1080p ultra-wide monitor. Now, this thing pairs really, really well with the mini PC. This resolution on a mini PC that is rocking something like a 680 or a 780M, it's going to perform surprisingly well in a lot of titles, and especially older titles. You're going to be able to play those in ultra wide, which is going to be a completely different experience. Honestly, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this thing, and this display does go up to 200 hertz, though keep in mind that it is a VA display, and it is on the cheaper side in comparison to the other one, so the ghosting is a lot more obvious in this. Still, it's one of those things where unless you are aware of what you're looking for, you chances are aren't going to have as much of a problem with it. I mean, I have a friend who uses this thing every single day, and he upgraded from a 60 hertz IPS display. Just to contextualize that for you, so it's not like he went from having some OLED display and switched to this and didn't notice a difference. He was going from essentially a pretty bad experience to something that is now better than what he was getting. But I'm sure if he went from something like a TN display to this, he would have probably complained about the ghosting. But he doesn't really seem to have any issues with it, and I think that it's one of those things where if you've never experienced anything else, chances are you're not going to have any issues with the display. I mean, I didn't really have a problem with it, and he less so. I think that a lot of people do tend to exaggerate how bad VA panels are, but those are options there, and there's a lot of sales on monitors right now. But I would recommend just taking a look at these, off-brand monitor companies. They do tend to have some pretty great savings. Now, another upgrade that you can do to your system right now is getting a new SSD, whether you have a second slot or you have your one slot that you want to upgrade. It is really one of the best quality of life improvements that you can do that you don't really think about until you do it, and then you realize that, man, I should have just done this so much sooner. Now, I am going to be picking up some SSDs. That's really the main reason that I'm even looking at these right now and just making that suggestion to you guys, because I do recommend just picking up SSDs whenever it is that you find some good prices on them. I do recommend picking them up now because it does seem like SSD and RAM prices are on their way up. So if there's any upgrades you've been wanting to do, I would just jump on them now. In terms of what I'm going to be picking up, I'm going to be picking up 2 of these Orico 2TB SSDs, and I am going to be picking up a 4TB 990 Evo Plus. But there are quite a lot of deals happening right now for SSDs, so here you really just have to make the decision on what compromises you want to make. I'm going with the Oricos because these are going to be going into mini PCs, and I'm going with the Samsung drive because that's going to be going into an external SSD enclosure. I want to see how it performs in that. If it isn't great, I can always just put the SSD in my main PC and just switch over to something else. But I'm hoping that the 990 Evo Plus does a good job as that, because I really don't want to have to shell out the money for getting some 990 Pros, but I will do it if the Evos end up giving me a problem, because at this point, at least for what I use these things for, slow SSDs are starting to become kind of a problem. But I mean, the price jump of going with like the 4TB 990 Pro versus the Evo is just crazy. $120 price difference for the exact same amount of storage. It's a difficult pill to swallow, so I really want to avoid making this purchase if I can. But we'll see how all of that works out. Let me know what you guys are picking up down below. I'm going to keep looking for any deals that are out there in any interesting categories, and I might make small little community posts or even videos about it just to let you guys know. But I'll catch you guys in the next one.